it's not just co-regulation to build intimacy and trust if you're doing it every single day, if it is something that is a constant. And there were times in my life and in my relationship where it was a constant. And I will say that Justin has been a beautiful partner in this, because when I'm going through those moments, he will reassure me, he will validate me, he will step in and support me in co-regulation. However, if I'm coming again and again and again with the same thing, he will put up a boundary. Hey babes, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, the podcast where we talk all things codependency, healing the mother wound, anxious attachment, and literally everything in between. I'm your host, Alyssa, and I come and share my own journey with healing codependency in my relationship and in my life, and share about the tools and the practices that have supported me and helped me along the way. This podcast is truly like my living, breathing journal as I process things with you all, share the real-time experiences of what navigating a healthy relationship can look and feel like when you've had a lifetime of patterns and tendencies that really haven't served us. I will correct myself. They served a purpose at one point in time. It's just as adults, it is likely that they aren't serving us anymore. And today, I really want to touch on something that was illuminated in the Codependency Alchemy Mastermind this last week around imbalances in relationships. Because sometimes when we are the person who has the codependent patterns or tendencies, when we are the person who experiences that fear of abandonment or rejection, we often will participate in this dynamic that overgives, and in that overgiving, in that creating comfort for our partners again and again and again, it really, really does cultivate this imbalance in the relationship, which is just a heavy fucking burden, which usually ends in huge conflicts because someone in the relationship is carrying all the weight. I know I shared that this episode is inspired by the conversations that we're having in the Codependency Alchemy Mastermind, and I do want to give you all a heads up that I am opening the doors for the mastermind in April. We will start in May. So this is a very intimate community where there's only going to be 6 spots. So it's first come, first serve. There's already a wait list. The people who are on the wait list are going to get first dibs on those 6 spots. It is a larger investment than the membership, which is only $9 a month on Substack, which is just phenomenal. But the mastermind is way more intimate in the sense that we are in a private group chat and you're getting access to me just every single day in those moments where there are conflicts with your partner, in those moments where you are struggling with your nervous system being dysregulated or navigating your patterns and tendencies in real time. There is nothing like this private chat that we're all in. And there are only 6 spots for a reason, because there is so much intimacy that gets to be cultivated when you have a smaller group of women gathering. We already struggle with shame. We already struggle with guilt. We already struggle with talking about our patterns and our tendencies that are quote unquote not ideal or not perfect. So having a small group of women that we start our journey with together and that we journey for 6 months together, it really helps open our hearts to allowing all parts of ourselves to be seen, all parts of ourselves to be held, even the parts that we see as undesirable. We're getting a safe space to play with that, and being witnessed by other women in that is so fucking healing. Need I say, it is healing the mother wound, which is saying that we need to do things in isolation. We need to compare ourselves to others. We need to judge others because that's how we feel better about ourselves. Instead, this is why I cultivated and created the Codependency Alchemy Mastermind, because we all have gifts. We all have gifts and we all have magic, and we all have a special, unique thing that we get to offer the world and our relationships. And it's usually buried under all of these layers layers of shame, layers of guilt, layers of dysfunctional ways of relating. I really try to lift the hood on that and get under the hood to see what's really here blocking us. What's really here holding us back? What are the stories? What are the limitations? What are the beliefs? And while simultaneously learning how to cultivate new ways of relating, ones that are honoring our autonomy and our authenticity, so that we can step into our most authentic expression of self with confidence, with ease, so that we are not continuously entertaining these relationship dynamics that are just keeping us in suffering. And that doesn't mean that this is something that your partner is doing. I really hope that through this podcast, you see that this is usually not about them. This is about us. And that is empowering because we have control over ourselves. And how we've related over time is that we try to have control over others, right? He doesn't do this. She never picks up. They always do this. They never do that. And what happens? What happens when we live our relationships in that state of mind is that we continuously are the victim, right? We're living in that victim consciousness that's a victim of circumstances. But that's because we're just not taking ownership for our part. If someone isn't aligned to what you value in a relationship, then you get to decide what you allow, right? The time you spend in that relationship is you and your choice in allowing that relationship to continue. It's why I think a lot of people avoid these conversations. I think it's why a lot of people avoid uncovering their codependent patterns and ways, because it's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of accountability. It's a lot of taking ownership for your life. And I remember the beginning days of that for me. I was like, this is too much. This is too much responsibility. I'm going to fuck it up. I'm going to make the wrong choice. I'm going to make the wrong decision, right? And so I get that hesitation of taking accountability and responsibility, because the fear of making a wrong choice or the wrong choice is so fucking terrifying. But I will say that after years of doing this work and continuously showing up for myself and my fears and my stories and my beliefs, I am noticing this spaciousness, this gratitude, and this excitement of yeah, actually, I am the creator of my own life. I am the creator of my own reality. I get to choose how I experience this moment. I get to choose how I experience this conflict. Do I want to feel like a victim of my circumstances, or do I want to take inventory of what the fuck is going on here and ask myself, is this aligned? If it's not, then what choice do I get to make to put myself in a situation that is more aligned? And yeah, maybe sometimes that is a relationship and it needing to end because it's not aligned. And that's scary, right? That can be scary. And I don't want to invalidate that by any stretch of the imagination. These things are terrifying. They are scary to step into your power, especially when our power has been constantly stripped from us, right? It's the thing that we want and crave the most. In all of the work that I've done with women, one of the first things they say is I just want to feel freedom. I want to feel free. Well, with freedom comes your responsibility. You get to choose how free you are. You get to choose what shackles you place on your wrists. And many of us are staying in relationships or continuously relating in the same way in our relationships that adds to the shackles on our wrists and our ankles. That adds to the burdens that we're placing on ourselves and the love that we're experiencing or not experiencing. So let's dive into this imbalance in relationships, because the chances are, if you're in a codependent relationship or you've been codependent in your life and you're healing from it, chances are you've probably overgiven in a lot of ways in your relationship, and probably also been an extreme taker in certain scenarios as well. So let me share a little bit of how this has shown up in my life and my relationships. Whenever my partner was experiencing discomfort, whenever he was going through his bouts of depression, I was the overgiver. I wanted to fix it for him. I wanted to perceive his needs, and I did tirelessly, like trying to figure out exactly what's going to make him happy without ever asking him, right? This could be a whole nother tangent. All I needed to do was ask him, but no, we don't do that. This will be the solution at the end that I'll leave in the podcast, but I'll just tease it now, I suppose. So I would overgive of my time, of my energy, of my effort. I would use, me making food as a way that I could overgive. I would use sex as a way that I could try to fix things. Like, I would just grasp at anything to try to help him feel better, reassure him, validate him, praise him, so on and so forth. And even as I'm saying all of these things, maybe you can relate, like there's this exhaustion. It's like my body gets tired. It's so much to hold. And when we have partners maybe who are experiencing a lot of their own fears of abandonment and rejection for whatever reason, they will continue to take and take and take and take, right? They're going to take as much as you give. And so then you have this dynamic where whenever they're unhappy, they go to you. Whenever they're sad, they go to you. They learn that you are the person who fixes this for them, rather than learning how to manage their own emotions, rather than learning how to hold or soothe themselves in their own discomfort. And I will say that how this showed up for me in reverse in relationship is that when I'm dysregulated, or when I'm triggered, or when I'm feeling some type of way, I look to Justin for reassurance and for validation and for praise. And I'll just continue to grasp at it. And something that has been so supportive in my relationship with Justin is that, one, I will just side note this, I don't think that it is bad to co-regulate with your partner by any means. I think it's a really beautiful act that we get to do for our partners to build trust, to build intimacy, to build safety. It's when that co-regulation becomes something needed every single time, where it is then a dependency. There are some times where the co-regulation is like, oh, this is just exactly what I need right now, and now I can move on. But I know that I also know how to regulate myself from time to time. It's not just co-regulation to build intimacy and trust if you're doing it every single day, if you're doing it every single week, if it is something that is a constant. And there were times in my life and in my relationship where it was a constant. And I will say that Justin has been a beautiful partner in this, because when I'm going through those moments, he will reassure me. He will validate me. He will step in and support me in co-regulation. However, if I'm coming again and again and again with the same thing, he will put up a boundary. He will usually say something to me like, this sounds like something you need to work through. This sounds like something that is yours that you need to figure out. Like, he will put up this wall. And in the beginning, it infuriated me. It made me feel like he didn't care about me. It made me feel like he didn't love me. It made me feel like he was mean and he was unkind. He was cold. However, because of his boundary, and it wasn't that he was saying it mean or that he was being unkind in his tone. He was just very firm. Like, this sounds like a you thing, and I trust that you'll figure it out. He just said it very matter-of-factly. Like, this sounds like something that you're moving through. he wouldn't even say anything else. Like he just wouldn't participate in it. And I would usually end up flailing at that point. And he was really good at just not taking it personally, even though everything I was doing in those moments of flailing was trying to get him to take it personally, because I wanted him to do something different. I wanted him to fix my discomfort. I wanted him to make me feel better. But if you're listening to this podcast and you've listened to previous episodes, you'll have learned, hopefully through my shares, that even the praise or validation that I get from Justin can add to my overflow. It can't fill my cup. So healing codependency has been, how can I fill my cup first and then allow the praise and validation to add to my overflow? And so when we have this imbalance in relationships, whether we're giving, trying to fill the void for somebody that we're in a relationship with, or whether we are trying to fill our own void through their own validation and praise for us, we have to see how self-regulation is always going to be the first most important thing that we can do for ourselves. And then we get to co-regulate. And then we get to build intimacy and safety with our partners. But this is after we have built some semblance of safety and intimacy with ourselves. Because what happens when there's a dependency on that co-regulation, on that need for constant validation and praise, is that it is going to continue to take from that person again and again and again and again. And I get why we give again and again and again and again. We give usually because we are fearing abandonment ourselves, because we are fearing rejection ourselves, because we are afraid of that person leaving if we were to actually set a boundary. We're afraid of what that might mean about us. We're afraid we're going to be perceived as mean. We're afraid that we're going to be perceived as unkind or unloving. But babes, boundaries are literally the most loving thing that you can do for yourself and for others. When you set a boundary with a partner who is experiencing a dysregulated moment, the way you get to show up in love is you get to tell them you see them. You see them in their discomfort. You see them in their experience, and that you are there for them, and that you trust that they are going to learn how to navigate it on their own. That you trust in their resilience to move through this. That's what our partners need in these moments where they're flailing. They don't need us to come and coddle them. They don't need us to come and reassure them. The wounded part of them wants that, right? But what we get to do for our partners and for ourselves, if we're the ones who are needing to take all the time, is we get to learn how to trust our own resilience, how to become more resilient, in fact. Because the truth of the matter is, we are human and we're going to have emotions. We are human and we're going to become dysregulated. We are human and we are going to experience the full range of emotions on any given day. What we want to begin to step into, not only for ourselves, but in our relationships, is how can we hold ourselves through the emotions without making our partner responsible for them? How can we manage and move through emotions without making our partner responsible for ours? So can you begin to get curious in your own relationship and ask yourself, when I'm feeling dysregulated, when I'm feeling triggered, when I'm seeking validation or praise from my partner, am I actually taking responsibility for my emotions first before I go to them? And just kind of start having a little bit of an experiment with this. And then vice versa. If your partner is continuously coming to you for validation, for praise, for reassurance, are you telling them lovingly that you see them, that you hear them, and that you trust their resilience to move through this? Validating their experience, yeah, this is hard. That sounds hard. That seems like it's really challenging. I know you know how to do hard things. I know you're going to get through this. Another option, which I had kind of teased earlier, is when we're unraveling from these codependent patterns, because it can be really challenging if you're like, no, I've always been like the person who fixes it, who like knows what they need. I don't even have to ask. But that is also taking away autonomy from our partners. So rather than assuming what their needs are and going into fixing it like straight away, can you pause and ask them, what is it that you need right now? How can I support you? This was really helpful for me when I was moving away from being the fixer and the savior in our relationship whenever Justin was struggling. It was like, can I just trust that his struggle is for him? Can I just trust that his struggle is meant to support him in stepping into the man that he was meant to be? And rather than judging his emotions and making them wrong or bad, which is unfortunately what society has primed us for, is like, there's these emotions and those are good, and then all of these emotions, those are bad, and you don't want those. What if we just put that way of thinking down for a moment and saw sadness and grief as a opportunity for growth, just as much as happiness and joy is opportunities for growth? And so I'm feeling called actually to share a little bit about anger, for example, because when there's conflicts, usually from that imbalance that we're experiencing in our relationship, because usually there's like resentment that builds up and anger that builds up, and usually there's someone in the relationship or both partners in the relationship who are experiencing dysregulation. Anger can be projected, right? Their discomfort is being projected. That's why when we get in fights, we say things we don't mean. And that is why boundaries are so important, because someone can say something that they don't mean to you when they're angry. However, you get to decide what it is that you take on and what you're not going to carry for somebody else. And this is the struggle with codependency that I see, is that when we are the ones who experience the fear of abandonment and rejection, we'll just take it. We'll take it and we'll take it and we'll take it. And then we end up someone's punching bag. And then we call it grace. We say, I'm giving them grace. They were having a hard day. They had a rough go at it. You know, I'm not going to judge him for his anger. I get that to a certain extent, but grace isn't grace if somebody ends up the bad guy in the story. And when we continuously are the punching bag for someone's projections, that person then gets to be the bad guy. Because guaranteed you're complaining to your friends, guaranteed you're complaining to your family, guaranteed you're holding these grudges and this, why me? Why are you doing this to me? I know it because I've been there. But we have to remember what we are allowing. It reminds me of that episode where Justin was saying like those, I mean, his mean things were not even really that mean, right? But I didn't sit there and say like, that's really rude, or that really hurt my feelings, or why are you saying that to me? You're not being nice. I said, I'm going to go stand in the other room and we can talk about this in a minute. I didn't entertain it. I didn't give power to it. I didn't go into him and hit what he's saying. I'm taking care of me, and I'm letting him know that I'm actually not participating in that conversation, but I'll have a different one with you. And I'm going to give you a little bit of space to figure that out on your own. I'm not going to mother you and tell you that what you said is like rude, right? Like we are doing all the work for them when like they aren't getting to learn, hey, I actually have to take ownership and responsibility for the things I say. No, because we're in there telling them what to think about what they're saying. It's literally taking away the opportunity for empathy. So when our partners are projecting on us whatever it is that they're feeling in that moment, can we, one, validate them at first, and then say, what is it that you need right now? And if they start saying a bunch of nasty things to you and start punishing you for how you are or what you said and start using your words against you, put up the boundary, sis. Put up the boundary. I hear you, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you about this at another time. I'm going to leave now. Or I'm going to my room now. Like, Justin and I live in a small ass fucking house. Like, I'm going to go for a walk now. I'm going to go in my room and I'm going to shut the door. Create some sort of boundary so that, one, you have space so that you don't project your own anger onto them. And also, they get to take their own space to perhaps reflect. I can't even think about what it is that Justin's doing. I did that for the first half of our relationship, and that shit didn't work because all it was doing was keeping me from actually sitting with my own emotions, my own feelings, the things that were coming up with me. And instead, I got to constantly make him wrong. I got to constantly critique him. I got to constantly like focus and make him into this person who wasn't doing the work, that wasn't healing. I'm just telling you guys, I'm just telling you guys, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I came home the other night and I had asked Justin, what do you think was the one thing that I have done in the relationship that has made the biggest positive impact in our relationship? He responded so quick, like he didn't even need to think about it. He was like, you stopped fixating on me and started focusing on yourself. And I'm like, exactly. We're so quick to think the reason why our relationships aren't working is because of the other person. But I mean, I know it's probably a very unpopular opinion, but I think that our relationships could be a lot different if we just started focusing on ourselves. And that does not mean staying in a relationship where it is abusive. This is not permission for that by any means. It's not like, oh, well, he's not working on himself, so I just have to take this. No, working on yourself means you learn that somebody who is physically or emotionally abusing you is not okay, and then you walk away. And that's why your relationships start changing, because the more that you tend to yourself, the more that you uncover your own values and what you value in a relationship, the less you put up with relationships that are not that. Because let's be real, everyone, like giving partners who are not doing the work all of this grace in hopes that they're going to quote unquote change, we're literally becoming martyrs. Like we're literally martyring ourselves. It's not cute. It's just not cute, and it's not helping anyone. It's certainly not helping them, because the only thing that they're being reassured of is I can continue to act and behave this way and somebody stays. I can continue to do and be how I am, and this person isn't going to leave me. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? We're doing it because we're afraid of being alone. So let's, instead of focusing on them and all the bullshit that they're doing, can we focus on our fear of being alone and begin to tend to that? Because that fear of being alone is also the reason why we are not asserting boundaries with the people that we love, because we don't feel safe in the relationship. We don't feel safe enough in the relationship to assert a boundary. So can we get to the root of why that is? Can we uncover what part of us doesn't feel safe? Can we uncover the part of us that is experiencing the fear of abandonment? And can we show up and reparent those parts of ourselves? If I set that boundary with Justin the other day and he said, fuck you, I'm leaving, you're a bitch, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I desire to be in a relationship with someone who can respect and honor my boundaries for not being called names or like projected on continuously, right? You're not my person. It doesn't mean that I'd love you any less. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. You're just not the person for me right now. And that's okay. I know it's crazy to even be in this place, because I was so opposite for the majority of my life. Even when I say things like this and feel it truly, of course, I would feel extreme sadness and grief if and when this relationship ever comes to an end. I absolutely will. However, at the same time, there's just so much work that gets unraveled and like, I don't know, how do I want to say this? That gets like uprooted when you're healing codependency. You start releasing all of these attachments to things, like he does not belong to me. I do not belong to him. But at a certain point in time, I felt very differently about relationships and things. This couch doesn't belong to me. Like the more I had attachments to things, the more suffering I experienced. So instead, it's just having gratitude for the things that are in my life right now and honoring when that thing is not going to be in my life anymore. That's where freedom and liberation really come in, you guys. So what I really hope you take away from this episode, you guys, is getting curious if there's potentially an imbalance in your relationship, whether that's you're constantly needing to be the fixer or the one that's validating or reassuring your partner, or vice versa, if you're constantly needing that reassurance and validation from your partner. And if you're noticing that cycle, and if it's coming up once a month, I mean, I don't want to put like a number of times, that's okay. But if it happens sporadically, it happens sporadically. But if it feels like this constant needing to do, like it's a part of your day to day or week to week, then it's, I think, worth looking at. If you're the one that is constantly needing the reassurance, can you begin to pause in those moments and ask yourself, how can I reassure myself first? How can I tend to myself first and then allow myself to receive reassurance from my partner through co-regulation? And I did a whole Substack newsletter on this, on how to heal codependency in a relationship. So I will leave the link for that below. It's a very good read. And if your partner is the one who's needing that constant praise or validation, or you needing to manage their emotions, then can you begin to play with boundaries that you can place for yourself and your partner, so that you aren't creating a codependency in your relationship and you're beginning to trust in their ability to start learning how to manage their own emotions. And so that can be by asking them, what they need in that moment instead of assuming what they need. And it can also be validating their experience while redirecting them back to themselves by saying something like, I know you know how to do hard things, or I trust you'll figure it out. And they're going to probably in the beginning freak out like I did. And they're going to probably say a lot of things that they don't mean and continue to redirect them back to themselves over and over and over again, and continue to articulate your boundaries. If name calling starts to come in, if blaming starts to come in, you get to again set a firm boundary of, I'm happy to have a conversation with you when we are able to communicate in a constructive way. And until then, I'm not available. I'm not available for this conversation. Not like this. They're going to be pissed. Just want to say that. I just want to name that. Like, they're going to probably be pissed. Let them be. It's uncomfortable. Let them be mad. Let them be mad about it. Don't let them harm you. Remove yourself from a situation if it becomes harmful, emotionally, mentally, well, obviously physically as well. And then ask yourself, if it gets to that point where you redirect them by having that boundary and they continue to attack and attack and attack without ever taking responsibility for those attacks, whether it's verbally, or physically, and ask yourself, like, is that the type of person who I want to be in a relationship with? I'm not saying, is this the person that I love? Of course you love them. That's why you're with them, right? I'm not saying that there has to be this like no love there, but you do have to ask yourself, do you want to stay in a relationship with someone in the name of love for them over the name of love for yourself? Because that's how we've been relating for generations. We're staying in relationships where we are not putting ourselves first, where we are not loving ourselves first, where we are not setting boundaries for ourselves first. And I truly don't believe that that is serving anyone. It is not serving the greater good. So if the person on the receiving end is unable or unwilling to take responsibility for themselves, responsibility for their actions, take accountability for the ways that they may have shown up, I think that is a very, very important detail and sign to look out for. Because how do you grow with someone who is unwilling to explore their actions? If you're here and you're listening to this podcast, you are staying curious, you are taking accountability, you are taking responsibility, you are learning yourself so that you can be better. That's what it takes in relationships. Both parties are willing to stay curious and take accountability and responsibility for their part. And that's how you can tell you're in a healthy relationship. It's not going to be perfect. That person's going to fuck up. I still say things where I'm like, oh, I really wish I didn't say that. I'm going to go take responsibility and make the repair. Now, if I did that every day, if I did that multiple times a day, I hope that Justin would have enough strength to put up a firm boundary and say, like, I absolutely will not, so that I could be like, this is actually not cool. I need to figure out how to manage and navigate these emotions that come up, because the way that I'm navigating them right now is just projecting. Those loving boundaries that are placed on us are redirecting us in so that we can tend to what is being triggered. And so when we're setting a boundary, that's what we're doing as well. We're saying, I trust you, and your trigger is your responsibility. And I will be here. I will be here at your side, and I will love you through it, but I'm not going to fix it for you. I think that is just the most loving thing we can do. You guys got a much calmer version of me. You should have seen me in the group chat for Codependency Alchemy Mastermind. One of the women was sharing something that was coming up for her, and I get like mama bear almost, where I'm like, let's talk about this. I got super heated. I was like, I need to roll down a window. I am getting hot. So it is truly such a gift to be with this group of women as they're navigating codependency in their life, and just seeing how much they've grown and evolved in the course of 6 months. Change happens fast when you're in community. Shifts and evolution can happen fast when you're surrounded by other women who have the same intention. And so if you are interested in the Codependency Alchemy Mastermind, like I said, I will be opening the doors for the mastermind at the beginning of April, and we will begin the first week of May. Because there are limited spots, I have a wait list for those who are interested. If you are interested, please send me a DM and I will get your email so that you get first dibs on the spots when they release. If this episode was supportive, please let me know. I love hearing from you guys. Shoot me a DM, leave a review on the podcast. It helps other people who are looking for these types of conversations. It helps them find the podcast, especially for those who are not following me on social media. If you're not following me on social media, come say hello. I post every freaking day. I just love connecting with you guys. So if you want more of the little intricate details of my life and what I'm doing, you get a lot of good stuff over on my socials. And the link to all those things is below. If you haven't already subscribed to YouTube, please hit subscribe and give this video a like so that more people can find this as well. And that's what I have for you guys today. I hope you have a beautiful fucking day, and I will see you next week. Bye.